The events of 2020 have really fueled a desire for many to learn more about the social justice issues in this country. Our photojournalist Mike Greenidge went out and talked to local artists who are using their work to inspire and teach others.
So Alex, we've seen a lot of monumental events this year. So I went out, sat with a few artists to find out how they're using these current events to inspire their artwork.
The larger conversation that's always ongoing is for artists to make work and to put work out, because that's an integral part of how we tell people about our experience.
Art is a form of expression, so every artist, as you know, has their way of expressing.
I'm trying to see how art can be used to inspire people with all the social unrest and all of that. I mean, since the last time we spoke, we had this other cat shot out here in Wisconsin, you know, and then you got the dude who drove in from Illinois to Portland with the AR-15, shot 2 more people. So it's just like the civil unrest just doesn't seem to stop.
Well, it's not going to stop, brother. And I tell you why. Because people are angry and they don't know how to express themselves.
When I see these situations go on, I see the anger, and the pain, I feel all of it.
Honestly, I don't feel like I could separate anything that happens in life from being an artist.
Art is such a community organizing tool. You know, like we can bring light, we can shape realities.
When the recent issues of, you know, Black Lives Matter came up, I was personally exhausted. I was like, yeah, we still have to tell y'all this? Like, maybe if they killed 3 people in one day, like, you guys would finally listen.
I always feel like artists always had that freedom to express what it is they're thinking and feeling. So I said, man, I want to reach out to some of these artists that I know and see what they think their role is, and the role and what they just feel as the role of arts in this kind of environment.
The role that art plays in society is that of, I call it a super language, right? So it's like things that people can't say with just words, they say through art.
So my name is Serena Saunders.
In times like this, you start to see a lot of artists. Stuff just starts popping up. And it creates a feeling inside you sometimes.
The very beginning of me creating a piece, honestly, is for me to release energy, not so much creating energy.
Talk to me about this piece you got hanging up in the dining room.
This piece is called The Scales Off. I feel like it's such a tricky topic for artists to talk about police injustice specifically, because when we try to bring light to it, oftentimes we get the tag of like, all cops aren't bad. And absolutely they aren't, but I feel like something one of my students said stuck with me, which is crooked cops corrupt communities. When I dive into creating a portrait, for me, it's about how can I create layers of narrative within this one space to present something that someone can look at more than once and maybe more than that and still learn something new. This is our Sandra Bland piece. Again, it just kind of talks about creating a portrait that tells a little bit of story. When we lost Sandra Bland, I wanted to create a beautiful portrait of her, mainly because at that time I felt like, you know, it was a deliberate attempt to circulate this mugshot image of her, which it goes back to my, the retelling of stories, right? Or narratives, or creating narratives. Because as an artist, we legit can do that, right? If I paint something out of my mind and create it in a way it didn't exist, 200 years from now that's an option for someone to believe.
Everybody's looking at you.
Let's talk a little bit about the car. How did you come up with the idea of getting the car and creating the car and making the statement that this car makes?
I don't know what it was, but I will say I was having a conversation with a client and I kind of blurted it out. And I'm like, this is going to sound crazy, but I was thinking about buying the same car Philando Castile had and painting his portrait on it. And the person responded like, that's not crazy at all. That's an amazing idea. And it's an expensive piece of canvas. I mean, but when the idea clicked, I think this is like the God moment, right? You get to see the idea, and then you realize why it's necessary. At first, the car to some is just a lot of color on the car, you know. And then once they get up on it and they see the writing and they start to ask the questions, and they all kind of, you can see it coming together like literally in their heads right in front of you. And then they're like, oh, okay, I'm with this. The idea that we as African Americans like cannot afford to brake, meaning like I cannot afford to push the brakes and have a broke brake, like, because that could result in my death, right? But also we can't take our foot off the gas when it comes to fighting for justice. So like we don't have time to take a break. We don't have a time to break the process of fighting to get, you know, to make things right. And we like literally can't have a broken brake light. So it's like no time to break.
Tell me, do you feel it now? Just pretend.
And Brown, hip-hop artist, community activist.
Unity! Unity! In the communities and make it gorgeous. Usually slipping in and out of my thoughts forming. This image of myself when I finally reach a fortune.
Knowing when I wanted to create music, when I was writing, I had the ability to really create about anything that I thought about.
This here's no game. Back in the day, they was fearing the name. There was liquor bottles that spare me some change. I mean,
people don't realize, especially rap and stuff, they don't realize how particular of a skill that can be, to be able to really just sit there, look at something and paint a picture of it.
Monopoly, a game of property. Make every piece you land in value. Apply this knowledge, buy back your plot.
A lot of the stuff you do, it deals with social issues that are going on in our city and in the world.
Corona don't own us. How you stay focused? COVID-19, the code is
You know, I'm here to bring balance, so we need to have just as many positive artists as much as what you consider negative.
When you got a product that's dope, you know it can change the culture.
Some people may think that when I say, you know, our culture's been taken over, they might think that I'm just against negative music or what you consider negative, and that's not the case at all, because I feel like these pictures need to be painted of what goes on in our communities in a raw, unapologetic way. But it's a difference between just painting the picture of your environment and what you went through opposed to glorifying it.
20 to life, the mistake of taking a life. I was insecure like...
Gun violence is so glorified that we try to bring a little balance to it, so we reenact certain things. I reenact a dead young teen. I had to actually make a post immediately like, yo, this is just acting. But it was real graphic, but it needed to be seen, because when you got the ability to be able to paint pictures of communities or what's going on.
Feel like the biggest crime in this case, the color of my skin. I wonder if I'll ever take another breath to see my kids.
You have the obligation to like show what goes on. I don't want to sugarcoat what I do.
Focus, focus theme. All this black power, I feel it's a racial war getting cooked up. This white cop on the neck now allowing me to look up. I'm shook up. Did you kill George Floyd to fill a void? Was you bullied in school? Was you a scared little boy? Did your daddy not care for you with love and affection? To prove you really mean something, you act over aggressive. Instead of a badge of honor, you wear your badge as a threat. I know all cops ain't like you. I know some will protect the communities despite the melanin that they lack. Say, we want peace. We want peace.
Malcolm X. I also have a Harriet Tubman piece coming. I got Angela Davis, 4 little girls, still working on it. I finished 1 prototype, sculpted the rest of them. It's just, I'm taking more time with it and putting in, because I want it to just look, you know, right. I'm a Corey Hanzo, creator, graphic artist, sculptor, painter, composer, create whatever I want to create. Afro pop art, I guess I call it. I play off nostalgia and use that to represent our experience or what we come from, how far we came, and present it in a package that doesn't have any trauma in it.
The sculpting is what I first got to know you for. And when I seen the figurines that you, or the action figures, excuse me, that you were designing, I was like, yo, man, like, nobody's doing this.
It was that, it was, look, there's no African-American figures. It started with me looking for them. Like, oh, I want a piece for my house. Oh, I don't have them. You know what? I don't see it. Instead of sitting there saying, where are they? Why don't we have? I can go wax poetically about all that. I just said, yo, I'll make it. The purpose of me doing these pieces is I want to connect the generations. So that's why you'll see a Bishop from Juice, and then you'll turn around and see a Langston Hughes, or you'll see a Maya Angelou, because I've done Maya Angelou too. I'm showing you cats you recognize that we grew up with, and then I'm bringing something from another generation, because without them, And that's why you'll see a Malcolm X, and then you'll see a Tupac, and a Nipsey. It all evens out, and that's where it will connect. So even when a person that's older sees the Malcolm X, they go, oh, I don't know that guy. That's a good piece. You know what I'm saying? I make sure we're seen in the pieces, so when they look at it, they're still just happy if they don't know it, to see that it's us, and it's represented in a different way, in a different light, and they can see how much was poured into it, and that love for your people was poured into it for it to look that way.
When these things happen, you see them on the news and you see this stuff and you see all the protesting and everything, do those instances inspire you?
When I see these situations go on, I see the anger and I see the pain, I feel all of it. Like you said, I did it to Trayvon Martin. How could I not work on that piece without feeling, what happened? When I did a Marvin Gaye, how could I not feel? See, all these pieces I feel because I'm looking at them and thinking about them, and I'm reliving a moment I wasn't part of. It's bigger than me, because especially white people, when they come in here and the hits watch them just be like, oh, thank you. And I'm like, thank me? You thanking me for? Because we need this. We need to learn this. We need to see this. There's a lot of us who don't know.
I grew up saying yes ma'am and no ma'am to kids that were younger than me, because that was the way it was down south. There was a white thing, a black thing. When I moved north, it was different. But what we're doing now is we're going backwards. Joe Barker, Philadelphia painter.
Tell me a little bit about your style of paint.
Pencil and watercolor, ink and watercolor, and then sometimes just watercolor, pure watercolor. As a black artist, I paint city scenes, but the people are suggestions of different colors. So I don't like stereotype. When I do a black historic building like the first school for blacks, 8th and Bainbridge, Cheney University, I think, came out of that. Prince Hall, I painted that. So that's like black history, you feel me? You see, I'm a product of the 60s. Born in Alabama, raised in the South, Jim Crow, segregated South.
Go home or go to your church.
So all this stuff that they're going through is not new to me.
Music-wise, visual arts, what were some of the things that you saw that you felt were inspiring or helping move forward the cause?
Well, you got to go with James Brown, Gil Scott-Heron.
The Constitution was no.
Then a lot of artists were doing pen and inks of brothers in chains. There was a lot of paintings of Muhammad Ali, the Black Madonna. And further back, people probably did more, like Horace Pippin, who did scenes of black farms. So you say, what can we do with art? Okay, so you can express yourself. You can do angry paintings. You can do happy paintings. You can do protest paintings. My one was a protest piece. I showed the art museum. I had people kneeling. That was my way of expressing it. So when you see the photos of all the different races marching together, that's inspirational. So when I did my piece, it made me feel inspired because all my people are in different colors anyway. So for me, I had something that was already there to work on. I had color, and I believe that we're a rainbow anyway. I've been believing this since I was in the 60s. I'm an old man. I want to paint, enjoy life, talk a lot of shit. Have a good time. Can't bother with the noise.
But now the noise is here, though, Joe, and I get that
the noise is here, but what you got to understand is I'm no longer playing in the noise. I'm a senior citizen who stays at home. I'm not out on the street, okay? I'm not out protesting. Like I said, I did mine in the 60s. I'm done. You know, these kids out here, if they want to protest, go to the neighborhoods where things bad are happening. Circling City Hall ain't doing nothing. They get tear gas, go up to North Philly, go up to West Philly, where the shooting is. Walk down them blocks. Take all them people that's supposed to go over there. That's what matters. Every night. Everybody knows that.
Official artist name is Oluwafemi, which you know, short form Femi. I am a music and visual artist.
This recent upturn of events of civil unrest around race has definitely got me thinking about, like, you know, like I was saying on the phone, there was a plan a long time ago that's still manifesting itself, kind of, you know.
We're tired.
In these moments where there's uprising, it's almost inevitable that the artists are going to come out in response to that. When we spoke to Hey Rally, they're like, yeah, we want you to speak to what's happening now. And I'm really lucky I got the opportunity to make a mural speaking to the time, because that kind of like made me like focus and say like, all right, like put your exhaustion aside, you know, and or channel whatever feelings you have and put them, you know, towards the work.
Fem, real quick, man, as we look at your piece on the wall here, man, just talk to me about it. What are we looking at?
One of the biggest things during the uprising to me was that was different from other times was to see how many people were coming out in protest. It drove home the idea that we can't be quiet about none of this injustice until we're all free. You know what I mean? So it's like someone who's holding up the placard of someone who's holding up a placard of someone who's eventually free. And that's literally the message. It's like we're gonna have to keep talking about our experiences and like bringing these injustices to light in order to break the chains.
When you look at the arts and you look at artists, the role of the artists in these kind of times.
I don't want to put it on every artist to have to respond to a situation. From my experience, a lot of artists do, but I also understand that like the larger conversation that's always ongoing is for artists to make work and to put work out, because that's an integral part of how we tell people about our experience, and that's an integral part of how we like explain to people what and who we are without using words.
If we're documenting history, if we're trying to create images that will help tell our story the way it needs to be told, it's important for us to report what's going on, right? So at this time, if anything, it's just giving us more information to digest and determine how can we create something that stamps this moment so that later on when it's told and retold, the tool of an artist is to present it the way it actually is in a way that cannot be altered.
There's something very important about human existence where we're all similar and we're different. And art for me is a practice of self-discovery. So anything I'm making is coming from me. And then when you see it and you co-sign it, that means there's something that we share. And I know that because this thing that came from the innards of my thought is connected, this person can connect to it.
We're supposed to be American exceptionalism, right? Well, whose story is a more crazy and a more example of American exceptionalism than Native Americans, African Americans? We're literally that story. We came from the mud, three-fifths of a man, whatever that was, but three-fifths of a man was in the White House. You see what I'm saying? If you want to preach about American history and American exceptionalism, y'all should be showing our story all the time, because that is a prime example of what the country, you know, is about.